The throne room of the Empire was the largest structure in the known galaxy. Its walls stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed near the ceiling. Light came through crystals the size of mountains, casting rainbows across floors made of living stone. Every surface was designed to make visitors feel small. Queen sat upon her throne of black glass, watching the human delegation with eyes that had seen 300 years of politics. She was tall even by standards, nearly 8 feet when she stood. Her scales shifted between purple and gold depending on her mood. Right now, they were a cold silver, the color of boredom. "These are your finest warriors?" she asked, her voice carrying across the massive chamber without effort. The human ambassador, a nervous man named Director, bowed deeply. "Yes, Your Majesty. Each one has been selected from millions of candidates. They represent the best humanity has to offer." Studied the line of humans standing at attention. There were 12 of them, all wearing impressive military uniforms covered in medals. They stood straight and proud, muscles visible even through their formal clothing. Each one had a file floating beside them in holographic display, showing their achievements, their kills, their victories. She was not impressed. The Galactic Council had forced this arrangement upon her. After humans made first contact 50 years ago, the Council decided that all major powers must accept a cultural exchange guard from the new species. It was meant to help humans integrate into galactic society, saw it for what it really was, a test. The Council wanted to see if humans could be trusted with real responsibility. Most alien rulers had selected the loudest, strongest human they could find. They wanted trophies, walking decorations that made them look progressive and open-minded. Wanted something else, she just did not know what. "Tell me," she said, leaning forward slightly, "why should I choose any of you?" The first candidate stepped forward. He was a giant of a man, his chest covered in combat medals. "Your Majesty, I have killed over 200 enemies in personal combat. I have led armies across 3 worlds. I am strong enough to tear a warrior in half with my bare hands." The court murmured with appreciation. They were the Empire's greatest rivals, 7-foot-tall creatures with armor like skin. Any human who could kill one was impressive. "Next," said flatly. The candidates continued, each one boasting louder than the last. One had survived alone on a death world for 6 months. Another had single-handedly stopped a terrorist attack. A third claimed to have never lost a fight in his entire life. Scales slowly turned gray, the color of disappointment. Then her eyes caught movement at the back of the room. There was a 13th human, a woman standing so still that had not noticed her before. She wore no medals. Her uniform was simple and dark. She was average height, average build, with a face that would disappear in any crowd. Her black hair was cut short and practical. But her eyes were different. They moved constantly, tracking every guard, every exit, every weapon in the room. She watched the way a predator watches, patient and calculating. "You," called out. The one in the back stepped forward. The other candidates turned in confusion. Director's face went pale. "Your Majesty," he said quickly, "that is just Lieutenant. She is not a candidate. She is here as a technical advisor." "I did not ask what she is. I asked her to step forward." Walked through the line of larger soldiers. She moved without sound, her footsteps somehow silent on the stone floor. When she reached the front, she did not bow as deeply as the others. She simply inclined her head with respect and waited. "Why are you not a candidate?" asked. Reached into her pocket and pulled out a small device. She typed something, and a mechanical voice spoke from the device. "I cannot speak, Your Majesty. I lost my voice in an accident. The selection committee decided I was unsuitable." The court erupted in whispers. A mute human, guarding the most powerful queen in the galaxy. The idea was absurd. But raised her hand, and silence fell instantly. "Why should I choose you?" she asked, the same question she had asked the others. Typed again. The mechanical voice said, "I will keep you alive." One of the other candidates laughed. "That's it. No battle records, no impressive kills, just a promise from a woman who cannot even speak." Did not react. She did not flinch, did not blush, did not show any emotion at all. She simply stood there, watching with those calculating eyes. That was when the Queen understood. The other candidates were performers. They wanted attention, glory, recognition. They saw this position as a prize to be won, but saw something different. She saw a job to be done. Had lived for 3 centuries. She had survived 17 assassination attempts, 2 civil wars, and countless political plots. She knew the difference between warriors who talked about killing and warriors who had actually done it many times. Had the eyes of someone who had done terrible things and never spoke of them. "Tell me about the accident that took your voice," said. Director stepped forward urgently. "Your Majesty, that information is classified." "I'm a queen of 1,000 worlds. Nothing is classified from me." Typed slowly this time. The mechanical voice spoke. "A reactor on Colony 7 was going to explode. 12,000 people. I went inside to fix it. I succeeded. The radiation damaged my vocal cords beyond repair." "You went into a failing reactor alone?" "Yes." "Knowing you would be hurt?" "Yes." "Why?" Pause, then she typed, "Because someone had to." The throne room was completely silent. Even the whispers had stopped. Stood from her throne. She was nearly 3 feet taller than, a giant of scales and ancient power looking down at a small, silent human. "The galaxy will mock me for this choice," said. "My advisors will say I have gone mad. The other empires will laugh and call you my mute pet." His expression did not change. "Do you have anything to say to that?" the Queen asked. Typed one more time. The mechanical voice said, "Let them laugh. I have been underestimated my entire life. It is useful." Something shifted in his chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as genuine interest, something she had not felt in decades. "I have made my decision," she announced to the court. "Lieutenant will serve as my cultural exchange guard." The court exploded in protest. Director looked like he might faint. The other candidates stared in disbelief. But simply bowed her head again and took her position, not at side, but 3 steps behind and to the left. The perfect position to watch the Queen's blind spots. She had already begun her job. As the court continued to argue and complain, sat back on her throne and watched her new guard. Stood completely still, but her eyes never stopped moving. She was cataloging every face, every weapon, every possible threat in the room. The Queen smiled slightly. For the first time in many years, she felt something new and strange. She felt safe. 300 light-years away, in a dark room filled with holographic screens, an intelligence officer watched the footage from the throne room. "They have selected the broken one," he said to his commander. "The mute, this will be easy." His commander clicked his mandibles in agreement. "Begin preparations. The Queen will be dead within the year." Neither of them noticed what had noticed. Neither of them saw the way his eyes tracked every shadow, every corner, every hidden angle of the room. Neither of them understood that silence was not weakness. It was patience, and had learned to be very, very patient. 3 months passed, and the court still laughed at Queen's choice. They called the silent pet behind closed doors. They made jokes about the mighty Queen who chose a broken human over trained warriors. The noble families whispered that perhaps was getting too old to rule. 300 years was a long time, even for a. Heard every whisper, she pretended not to. She had learned long ago that people spoke freely around those they considered unimportant. A guard who could not speak was barely noticed. A small human woman in a palace of giants became invisible, and invisible was exactly what wanted to be. Every morning, she woke before the sun rose. She checked the Queen's chambers for new surveillance devices. She found 3 in the first week alone. She tested the food-checking equipment. She reviewed the guard rotation schedules and memorized the faces of every new servant in the palace. Every evening, she stood behind his throne during court sessions. She watched the nobles bow and smile and speak sweet words. She noticed which ones sweated too much, which ones glanced at the exits, which ones carried hidden weapons under their ceremonial robes. She wrote everything in a small notebook that never left her body. Noticed her dedication but said nothing at first. The Queen had her own duties, her own worries. A trade dispute with the eastern colonies demanded attention. A famine on one of the agricultural worlds required resources. The endless machinery of empire consumed her days. But sometimes, late at night, she would find standing guard outside her chambers, not sleeping, just watching. "Do you ever rest?" asked one night. Pulled out her typing device. The mechanical voice said, "I rest when you are safe. I am in my own palace, surrounded by thousands of guards." Typed again, "Then I will rest never." Did not know whether to be touched or concerned, perhaps both. The attack came on a day of celebration. The Festival of First Light was the holiest day in culture. It celebrated the moment 8,000 years ago when the first looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. Gifts were exchanged between noble houses. Music filled the palace. The Queen received tribute from all corners of the empire. Stood in her usual position, 3 steps behind his left shoulder. Her eyes moved constantly, tracking every noble, every servant, every object that came near the Queen. A delegation from the system approached the throne. They were allies, or so everyone believed. Their leader carried a beautiful ornament made of crystal and light, a traditional gift of friendship. "For Her Majesty," the leader announced proudly. "Crafted by our finest artisans, it took 3 years to complete." The ornament was stunning. It caught the light and split it into 1,000 colors, painting the throne room in rainbows. The court gasped with appreciation. Reached for it. His hand caught the Queen's wrist. Everyone froze. The court fell silent. To touch the Queen without permission was a crime punishable by death. But was not looking at. She was looking at the ornament, at the way the light moved inside it, at the almost invisible shimmer along its surface. She took the ornament from the confused delegation leader. Before anyone could stop her, she licked her finger and touched the crystal's surface. The skin on her finger began to bubble and melt. Did not scream. She did not make any sound at all. She simply held up her dissolving finger for the court to see, then typed one-handed on her device. "Neurotoxin. Contact poison. The Queen would have died in seconds." Chaos erupted. Guards seized the delegation. Nobles scrambled away from the poisoned ornament, sat frozen on her throne, staring at its ruined hand with wide eyes. Was already wrapping the wound with fabric torn from her sleeve. Her face showed no pain, though the poison was eating through her flesh down to the bone. "Take her to the medical bay," ordered, her voice sharp with something she did not recognize. Fear. No, she was too old for fear. It was something else, something worse. It was guilt. The doctors worked for 6 hours to save his hand. The poison was designed to kill, and human biology was different enough that it merely destroyed tissue instead of reaching vital organs. Merely. As if losing 2 fingers was a small thing. Sat through the entire procedure without any pain medication. She refused it. She said, through her typing device, that she needed to stay alert in case of another attack. Came to the medical bay at midnight. She found sitting up in bed, her bandaged hand held carefully at her side, her eyes still watching the door. "You should not be awake," the Queen said. Typed, "Neither should you." Sat in the chair beside the bed. It was too small for her. Furniture in palaces was built for bodies. She looked ridiculous, her long legs folded awkwardly, her scales cramped against the armrests. She did not care. "Why did you touch it?" she asked. "You could have just warned me. You did not need to test it yourself." Was quiet for a long moment. Then she typed, "I was not certain it was poison. If I was wrong, I would have embarrassed you. A queen cannot be embarrassed by her guard. So you risked your hand, your life to protect my dignity." Yes. Felt that strange feeling again, the one she did not have a name for. "That was foolish," she said finally. Typed, "Perhaps, but you are alive. That is what matters." "No," said firmly. "That is not all that matters. You matter too." Looked up. For the first time since they met, saw something behind those calculating eyes. Surprise, confusion, and something else, something old and wounded that kept buried very deep. She typed slowly, "You are the first ruler who looked at me and saw something other than damage." Did not know how to respond. In 300 years of ruling, she had received countless compliments, countless declarations of loyalty and love. All of them had been political. All of them had been performances. This was different. This small, silent human with her ruined hand and her watchful eyes, she meant every word. "Teach me," said suddenly. Tilted her head in question. "Teach me your language, the silent one, the way you speak without words." For a long moment did not move. Then slowly she raised her good hand and made a gesture, fingers spreading outward from her chest. "What does that mean?" asked. Typed, "Thank you." Over the following weeks, the Queen of 1,000 Worlds learned to speak with her hands. She learned that a slight tilt of the head meant, "I am listening," that 2 fingers pressed together meant danger, that a palm pressed to the heart meant, "I promise." She learned that silence was not emptiness, it was observation, it was patience, it was power. The court whispered that their queen had gone mad. She spent hours each day in wordless conversation with her human guard. She canceled meetings to practice hand signs. She smiled, actually smiled, when corrected her gestures. What they did not understand was, that was not just learning a language. She was learning to see the world the way saw it. And saw everything. She saw the 17 nobles who were secretly meeting with agents. She saw the 3 servants who reported to foreign intelligence. She saw the financial records that showed money flowing from the palace to hidden accounts. She had been watching and waiting, building her case piece by piece. Soon she would be ready. And when she was ready, the enemies of the queen would learn a terrible truth. The silent ones were always the most dangerous. The outer colonies were burning. Not with fire, but with rebellion. 3 worlds had declared independence from the empire. 2 more were threatening to follow. The news came every day, another protest, another riot, another governor forced to flee. The empire that had stood for 8,000 years was cracking. Queen sat in her war council, surrounded by generals and advisors who shouted over each other. They demanded troops. They demanded punishment. They demanded blood. Stood in her usual place, 3 steps behind the queen's left shoulder. Her bandaged hand had healed, leaving 2 missing fingers as the only evidence of her sacrifice. She watched the council argue with those patient, calculating eyes. She said nothing, but she saw everything. "We must crush them immediately." General slammed his fist on the table. He was the oldest general in the empire, a veteran of 100 battles. "Send the fleet, burn their cities, make an example. And create martyrs." Ambassador shook her head. She was young for a council member, only 80 years old. "The outer colonies will unite against us. We will face a war we cannot win." "Then what do you suggest? Let them walk away." The argument continued in circles, listened with growing frustration. Her scales had turned the dark blue of deep worry, and she could feel a headache building behind her eyes. Then she felt a gentle touch on her arm. Was holding up her typing device. On the screen were 2 words, "Private meeting." Nodded slightly. She raised her hand and the council fell silent. "We will continue this discussion tomorrow," she announced. "I need time to consider our options." The council members exchanged confused glances but obeyed. They filed out of the room, still arguing amongst themselves. Only General paused at the door, giving a look of pure contempt. "Perhaps your Majesty should listen to real advisors," he said, "instead of her pet human." His expression did not change. She simply waited until he left, then closed the door behind him. "What is it?" asked once they were alone. Pulled out her notebook, the one she always carried. She opened it to a page covered in names, dates, and connections drawn in thin lines. Then she typed, "The rebellion is not natural, it was created." Study the page, explain. Typed rapidly, "I have watched your court for 6 months. I have listened to conversations they thought no one could hear. The rebellion is funded by the consortium. They have agents in your palace, 17 of them. They are paying the colonial governors to cause chaos." 17, felt her scales flash hot with anger. "In my own court." "Yes, including 2 members of your war council." Stared at her guard. "You are certain?" Typed, "I am certain. I have evidence. Financial records, recorded conversations, everything." The Queen leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. If this was true, and she believed it was, then everything changed. The rebellion was not about independence. It was about destroying the empire from within. "Who are they?" she demanded. "Name them. I will have them arrested immediately." Shook her head, she typed, "Not yet. If we arrest them now, we catch 17 spies. If we wait, we catch the entire network. Wait while my colonies burn." His eyes met the Queen's directly. In them, saw something cold and patient, the look of a hunter who understood that the best kills required time. She typed, "Let me work, give me 2 weeks. I will destroy them completely." Every instinct told to act now. She was a queen. She solved problems with armies and force. Waiting felt like weakness. Patience felt like failure. But she had learned to trust this silent human. She had learned that saw angles that others missed. 2 weeks, agreed, "but I want to know everything." Nodded, then she did something she had never done before. She smiled, just slightly, just for a moment. Then she went to work. For the next 2 weeks, became a ghost in the palace. She moved through servant corridors and forgotten passages. She listened at doors and recorded conversations. She planted false information like seeds, then watched to see which traitors spread it. The 17 spies believed they were winning. They thought the Queen was distracted by the rebellion, too busy fighting fires to notice the matches in their hands. They grew bold. They made mistakes. And was there for every single one. She discovered that General, the old war hero, had been selling military secrets for decades. She found evidence that the ambassador himself was coordinating the rebellion through secret channels. She traced money from banks to colonial leaders, documenting every transaction. But most importantly, she let them believe they were safe. She acted confused in council meetings. She stood silently behind the Queen, appearing as useless as everyone believed her to be. The spies laughed about her, the mute pet, the broken human, the embarrassing choice. They never noticed that she was watching them too. On the 14th day brought her complete file too. It was enormous, hundreds of pages of evidence, recordings, financial documents, and confessions obtained through careful manipulation. Every spy was named. Every connection was mapped. Every crime was documented. Read through it in stunned silence. Her intelligence agencies, the best in the galaxy, had found nothing. This small, silent human had uncovered a conspiracy that threatened her entire empire. "How?" she finally asked. "How did you do this?" Typed, "They forgot I was there. Loud people reveal themselves. I am never loud." The Queen looked at her guard with new eyes. She had known was competent. She had known was dedicated. But she had not understood, not fully, what she had invited into her palace. Was not just a guard. She was a weapon, a weapon that smiled politely and stood in the shadows and destroyed empires without making a sound. "What do you recommend?" asked. Typed, "We do not arrest them privately, we expose them publicly. Tomorrow is the gathering of ambassadors. Every major power in the galaxy will be present. We show them the evidence. We name thee as the true criminals. We make it impossible for them to deny." It was brilliant, and it was dangerous. If anything went wrong, would be embarrassed before the entire galaxy. But if it worked, do it, the Queen decided. Prepare everything. Bowed her head. Then she typed one more thing. There will be violence. They will try to stop us when they realize what is happening. Are you prepared for that? Scales flashed the bright red of determination. Let them try, she said. They will learn what happens when someone threatens my empire. Nodded, but before she left to prepare, she typed one final message. Thank you for trusting me. Felt that strange feeling again, the one she had felt in the medical bay months ago, the one she still did not have a name for. Thank you for being worth trusting, she replied. Smile was small but real. Then she disappeared into the shadows, already planning the destruction of 17 traitors and one foreign power. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn that silence was not weakness. It was the quiet before thunder. The gathering of ambassadors was destroyed before it began. Not by violence, that would come later, but by truth. Queen stood before representatives of 47 alien species and revealed every secret the consortium had tried to hide. The evidence was overwhelming. The recordings were undeniable. The financial documents were traced and by independent observers. By the end of her speech, the ambassador was being escorted out in restraints. The 17 traitors in her court were under arrest, and the rebellion in the outer colonies, suddenly deprived of funding and coordination, began to collapse. The galaxy watched in shock. The mighty consortium, humiliated before the entire galactic community. Their political power, built over centuries, crumbled in a single afternoon. And standing 3 steps behind Queen, silent and watchful, was the small human woman who had made it all possible. They did not accept their defeat quietly. Within days, they hired the Pale Hand. The Pale Hand was not an organization that advertised. They had no headquarters, no public membership, no official existence. They were ghosts, assassins who had never failed in 400 years of operation. Kings and emperors had died at their hands. Entire bloodlines had been erased. They were the most expensive and most effective killers in the known galaxy. They accepted the contract on Queen without hesitation, but they added a special request: make the human suffer, make her death painful and public, teach the galaxy what happens when a primitive species embarrasses its betters. The Pale Hand agreed. They sent 12 of their best. They came during the Festival of Moons. Had argued against holding the festival. It was too soon after the political upheaval, she typed. There were too many unknown threats. The Queen should remain in her secure chambers until the situation stabilized. But refused. She was a queen, not a prisoner. Her people needed to see her strength, her confidence, her refusal to hide from enemies. The Festival of Moons would continue as planned. Accepted the decision without further argument. She simply began preparing for what she knew would come. She trained the palace guards in new formations, subtle changes that created overlapping fields of protection. She mapped every entrance, every corridor, every possible attack route. She identified 6 locations where assassins might hide and had them secretly monitored. She also found an unexpected ally. Prince was younger brother, a quiet, scholarly whom the court considered useless. He spent his days in the palace library, reading old texts and avoiding political events. Everyone assumed he was weak, cowardly, unworthy of his royal blood. Saw something different. She saw the way his eyes tracked movement, quick and intelligent. She saw the calluses on his hands, hidden under gloves, that came from secret weapons practice. She saw a prince who had learned to be invisible because it was safer than being seen. She recognized herself in him. One night, she found him in the library and placed a simple note in front of him. "You are not as weak as you pretend. Neither am I. Would you like to learn from each other?" Stared at the note for a long moment. Then he looked up at the silent human with new understanding in his eyes. "What would you teach me?" he asked. Wrote another note, "How to protect your sister when I am gone." For months, they trained in secret. Taught everything she knew about real combat, not the ceremonial fighting of nobility, but the brutal, efficient violence that kept people alive. In turn, helped understand palace politics, teaching her which nobles could be trusted and which were dangerous. Neither of them told the queen. Some preparations were better made in silence. The night of the Festival of Moons was beautiful. Both moons hung full in the sky, casting silver light across the palace gardens. Music filled the air. Thousands of guests danced and celebrated, unaware of the hunters moving among them. Felt them before she saw them. It was a wrongness in the crowd's rhythm. People moving against the flow of celebration, their bodies too tense, their eyes too focused. She counted them quickly. 12 figures in servant clothing, positioning themselves around the queen. She had seconds to act. Grabbed her arm and pulled her behind a stone pillar. The queen started to protest, then saw the look in her guard's eyes, a look of absolute certainty. "Stay here," typed quickly. "Do not move until I return." "What is happening?" But was already gone, melting into the crowd like smoke. The first assassin died without understanding what happened. One moment he was moving toward the pillar where the queen hid. The next, a blade had sliced through his throat from behind. He fell silently, his body hidden by the celebrating crowd. The second assassin saw his partner fall and spun around, weapon ready. He saw nothing, just a small human woman walking past, her expression blank and bored. He dismissed her as unimportant and turned back toward his target. That was his last mistake. Killed him with his own knife, taken from his belt so smoothly he never felt it leave. The remaining assassins began to realize something was wrong. Their communication devices crackled with silence. Their partners were not responding. They drew their weapons openly now, abandoning stealth for speed. The crowd screamed and scattered. Palace guards rushed forward, but they were too slow, too untrained for this kind of violence. Was not slow. She fought the way humans had learned to fight on Earth, a death world where everything wanted to kill you. She used their weapons against them. She turned their technology into weakness, jamming their phase-shifting equipment with a device she had built herself. She moved through them like water through stone, never stopping, never hesitating. 9 assassins fell before they understood what was happening. The last 3 cornered her near the garden fountain. She was bleeding from a dozen wounds, cuts on her arms, a deep gash on her shoulder, a burn on her side from an energy weapon. Her breathing was heavy. Her movements were finally slowing. The lead assassin smiled behind his mask. "You fought well for a human," he said, "but this ends now. You are 1 against 3. Looked at them with those calculating eyes. Then she did something impossible. She spoke. Her voice was broken and rasping, barely above a whisper. The words scraped through her damaged throat like gravel over glass, but they were clear enough to understand. "I know," she said. The assassins hesitated, confused by her response. That was when Prince stepped from the shadows. He was not alone. Behind him were 20 palace guards, the ones had been secretly training for months. They moved with precision and purpose, their weapons already firing. The 3 assassins fell in seconds. Collapsed to her knees. The garden was suddenly quiet except for the distant sounds of panic. Blood pooled around her, spreading across the white stone. Then was there, her massive form dropping to the ground beside her guard. The queen's scales had turned pure white, the color of terror. She said, her voice cracking, "Stay awake, help is coming." Tried to type, but her hands were shaking too badly. So she did something she had not done in 5 years. She spoke again. "Safe," she whispered, "you are safe." Then her eyes closed, and she felt nothing at all. Stood over them both, still holding his weapon. He looked at the fallen assassins, then at his sister cradling the broken human. "She trained me," he said quietly. "She knew this might happen. She wanted to make sure I could protect you when she was gone." Looked up at her brother with eyes full of tears she had not shed in 100 years. "She is not gone," the queen said fiercely. "She is not allowed to be gone." She gathered small body in her arms and ran toward the medical wing, leaving a trail of blood across the palace floors. Behind her, the galaxy began to whisper a new story. The mute human who killed 9 elite assassins alone, who spoke for the first time in years to face her death, who saved the most powerful queen in the galaxy through silence and sacrifice. The story spread faster than light. And everywhere it went, humans listened with quiet pride. Floated in darkness for 11 days. She was not aware of time passing. She drifted through memories like a boat on a black ocean, sometimes sinking into nightmares, sometimes rising toward warmth she could not name. She remembered the reactor on Colony 7, the heat, the radiation alarm screaming as she climbed deeper into the failing core, the faces of 12,000 people who would die if she failed, the explosion that stole her voice but saved their lives. She remembered the years after, the hospitals, the therapy, the pitying looks from commanders who no longer knew what to do with a broken soldier, the slow realization that she had become invisible, a ghost walking through a world that had forgotten her. She remembered choosing silence, not because she could not speak, her throat could manage whispers with enough effort, but because silence was simpler. Silence meant people did not expect things from her. Silence meant she could disappear. But then she remembered something else. She remembered a queen who looked at her and saw something worth choosing. She remembered learning that silence was not about disappearing. It was about watching, about protecting, about becoming the shadow that kept others safe. She remembered S's voice, desperate and commanding. "She is not allowed to be gone." Woke up. The first thing she saw was the ceiling of the queen's private chambers, not the medical wing, but the royal bedroom itself. The walls were made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. The bed was enormous, built for a body, and felt lost in its vastness. The second thing she saw was the queen sat in a chair beside the bed. She was writing in a small notebook, a human notebook, purchased from a human shop. Her massive hands moved carefully, forming letters in the silent language had taught her. When she noticed S's eyes opening, she dropped the notebook and leaned forward. "You are awake," said. Her voice was strange, thick with something I'd never heard from her before. Relief, fear, joy. Tried to sit up, but her body refused. Everything hurt. Her arms were wrapped in healing bandages. Her shoulder was immobilized. She could feel the pull of stitches across her ribs. "Do not move," commanded. "The doctors say you need weeks of rest. Your human body is," she paused, searching for words, "fragile, but also stubborn. They did not expect you to survive." Managed to raise one hand, the one that still had all its fingers, and make a sign. It meant, "How long?" 11 days, answered. "I have not left this room." His eyes widened. 11 days. The queen of 1,000 worlds had abandoned her duties for 11 days to sit beside a human guard. She tried to type a protest, but gently took the device from her hand. "No," the queen said firmly. "You do not get to argue. You do not get to tell me this was foolish. You almost died protecting me. I am allowed to sit with you." Stared at her for a long moment. Then slowly she made another sign, fingers spreading outward from her chest. "Thank you." Made the same sign back. over the following days, grew stronger. She learned what had happened while she slept. The story of the Festival of Moons had spread across the galaxy. Every species, every world, every news network was talking about the mute human who killed 9 elite assassins with simple steel blades. They called her the Silent Shadow, the ghost of the Last Guardian. But more importantly, they talked about what she represented. Humans were a young species. They had only been traveling between stars for 2 centuries. Most alien civilizations considered them primitives, clever animals who had stumbled onto technology they did not deserve. They were tolerated, not respected. Had changed that. Prince visited every day, bringing reports and news. He looked different now, standing, speaking with confidence. The training had given him had awakened something that had been sleeping for years. The Galactic Council held an emergency session, he told her one afternoon. They have officially recognized humans as a Class 1 species, full rights, full protection, full membership in galactic society. Typed because of one fight. Because of what you showed them, said. You were outmatched and alone. You should have died in seconds. Instead, you destroyed an assassination collective that had never failed in 400 years. He smiled slightly. The galaxy is asking a new question now. If one broken human can do this, what can all of them do together? That night came to his bedside with a different kind of news. Other rulers are requesting human guards, she said. Specifically, they are requesting, she paused, reading from a document, the quiet ones. They want humans like you. Typed, I am not special. Any human could have done what I did. Laughed, a genuine laugh, warm and full. That is exactly what makes you terrifying. You truly believe that. You believe any human could walk into a failing reactor, could fight 12 assassins, could sacrifice everything for someone they barely know. She set down the document and looked at it seriously. Humans do not understand how strange they are. You come from a world that tried to kill you every day. Your oceans are poisonous. Your plants fight back. Your own bodies attack themselves. You should have died 1,000,000 times before reaching the stars. But you did not die. You adapted. You survived. And somewhere along the way, you decided that survival was not enough, that you had to protect each other no matter the cost. She reached out and took his hand, the one missing 2 fingers. That is what the galaxy saw at the Festival of Moons. Not just strength, not just skill. They saw a human who threw herself into death for a queen who was not even her own species. They saw loyalty that logic. Was quiet for a long moment, then she typed, I did not do it for the galaxy, I did it for you. Scales shifted through a dozen colors, emotions too complex for to read. Finally, they settled on a soft gold, warmer than sunlight. I know, the queen said. That is why I am going to ask you something I have never asked anyone. She lifted his hand and wrote on her palm, the way had taught her, the way they communicated when words felt too small. She wrote, stay with me, not as a guard, as a friend, as family. Felt something break open in her chest. Not pain, something else. Something she had not felt since the reactor took her voice and left her empty. She wrote back on his palm, I was going to stay anyway. 3 months later, stood beside Queen at the Galactic Summit. The gathering was massive, representatives from every species in known space, filling a chamber the size of a city. Was still recovering. She walked with a slight limp now, and her left arm would never be as strong as before. But she stood tall in her new uniform, the royal colors of the Empire mixed with the simple gray of human military tradition. The consortium had been forced to pay reparations and had lost half their political influence. Their ambassador was new, younger, less arrogant, sent to try to rebuild relations. He approached Queen during a break in proceedings, his face unreadable. Your Majesty, he said, bowing stiffly, the consortium wishes to express regret for recent events. We hope our species can move forward in peace. I appreciate the sentiment, replied calmly. The ambassador glanced at with barely hidden contempt. I see you still keep your human at your side. A curiosity. The galaxy wonders why you bother with he paused, choosing his words carefully, a voiceless pet. The insult hung in the air. Nearby conversation stopped as diplomats turned to watch. Smiled with all 3 rows of teeth. She is not voiceless, the queen said, her voice carrying across the chamber. She simply has nothing to say to you. Met the ambassador's eyes. She said nothing. She did nothing. She simply looked at him the way she had looked at the assassins before they died. The ambassador held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then he looked away. He bowed quickly to the queen and retreated, his steps just slightly too fast. Watched him go with satisfaction. Then she glanced down at and made a quick sign with her fingers, one that had taught her privately. It meant that was fun. Allowed herself a small smile. Then she returned to her position, 3 steps behind the queen's left shoulder, watching everything, missing nothing. The galaxy had learned many lessons from the silent human guard. They had learned that strength did not require noise, that loyalty could not be bought, that humans were never more dangerous than when they had something to protect. But there was one more lesson that would take years to understand. Was not special. She had never been special. She was simply a human who refused to give up, who kept fighting when fighting was impossible, who loved with a fierceness that logic. And there were billions more just like her. Across the galaxy, alien rulers began to whisper a new warning to each other. Be careful with the humans, they said. Be very, very careful. Because the loud ones are frightening, but the quiet ones are the ones you never see coming. In the silent space between stars, humanity had found its voice. And the galaxy would never forget the sound.